Did you know the LA Kings have their own culinary partner? It's Superfood, celebrating 10 years and over 1 million meals served. Since 2020, the Kings have trusted Superfood to fuel their players. Now through Simply Lunch, you can bring that same performance-driven food to your office. Because when people eat better, they work better. Visit mysuperfood.com. That's mysuperfd.com. Or call 213-973-6145. Qualified companies can enjoy a free lunch for up to 10 managers.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
It's Monday morning. That means it's time to crown a King of the Week. Joining me this week to help me out, Zach Dooley. How are you doing today, Zach?
Jesse, I am doing great. How about you?
I'm good. This is going to be a weird one, I think, because there's a lot of players out and a lot of new players in and a lot of ups and downs in the games, I feel like. So I guess let's just dive into it. Like, who's your honorable mention for the week?
So it was funny when we were talking about this earlier. If you look at this week, the Kings went 2-1-1.
Yeah.
They had 11 players with at least 2 points and 0 players with more than 3 points. Right. So we could have 2 completely separate lists of 3 with the same totals.
And I went
crazy.
Back and forth on a number of different names.
I thought about it for so long and eventually just said, I'm picking these 3. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing here. Mm-hmm. So we're doing first honorable mention, right?
Yeah.
So my honorable mention is Taylor Ward.
Okay.
He had 2 assists in 3 games. He had an assist on Andre Lee's goal in Edmonton, and had an assist in the Winnipeg game. But I think that it's important to highlight a guy who came in from the AHL. I think he was a plus player in all 3 games. He was on the ice late in Edmonton and in the San Jose game with Kempe and Laferriere. He was trusted in that role. Helped both of those games at least get into overtime. So I think that he came up and largely just did his job and probably exceeded it. He thought he looked pretty good, and in a week with a lot of parity, he was one who I thought should be recognized.
Yeah, and it's funny. I wasn't sure. We'll get more into this later in the thing, but I wasn't sure how they were going to use the different players. Because I've started saying, like, Jim Hiller may not be conventional, but he's predictable. But every now and then he winds up being unpredictable as well. I would have anticipated all of the AHL recall players, and I'm going to include guys like Hellenius and Malott, even though they have proven their mettle at the NHL level. These are guys that spent a lot of last season, if not the season before, in the AHL. And I would have anticipated that those players would have been completely relegated to the bottom 6 roles, and they weren't. And Taylor Ward played up and down the lineup, and we know, he's got size and he plays the type of game. Jared Shaffrin is very fond of trumpeting the benefits of a Taylor Ward, and he came in and did exactly what he was asked to do. And to your point, he got points. He made an impact. I never once saw him out there and thought, oh no, Taylor Ward. And that's really all you can ask of for an emergency recall in the middle of a season.
There was 2 ways to do it, right? You either do what you thought, which would be load up the top 6 and then piece together some version of the other 5 dudes, or you do what the Kings did, which is keep the pieces that are already in place and then paper the guys that you mentioned around them.
Yeah.
They went the latter. I can see validity to both for sure. I think their hands were tied a little bit with the number of centers available. Like Ward and Lee are both wings.
You're right. Yes.
And if you load up the top 6, you either need to, 1, exclude Byfield, Laferriere, or Turcotte from that top 6, and that doesn't really mesh if you are loading up a top 6. Or you have to play a winger at center, and that doesn't work either. So it's like a weird one. Yeah. You can kind of you could shake it both ways, and it's going to be weird either way. But yeah, like you saw Lee moved up in the lineup at times. Ward, Jeff Malott played a ton. He was matched up with McDavid's line in the Oilers game, and made a couple of plays that you're like, he held his own. So yeah, those guys all kind of mixed and matched for sure.
And Ward not only having 2 assists, but was a +3
Yeah.
That's not nothing in in
I
three
think he
games,
was a
right? Like,
+1 in each game. So,
yeah.
and one of those games was a 5-1 loss. So
Hmm.
he was a +1 in all 3 games. And one of those games, the team was -4. So I think that says something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it gives me cover's not the right word, but it sort of goes hand in hand with my pick for honorable mention. And I did the same thing as you, where I went round and round and round and finally just went, okay, you know what? Listen, Andre Lee scored a goal.
Yeah.
So he gets my honorable
Yeah.
mention because he gets
Yeah.
called
It
up in emergency goal. And that's sort of my
had to be one of
unwritten.
the two.
Yeah, it's just sort of my
Yeah.
unwritten rule is like, if you get called up and you get points, you get the honorable mention because good for you. And so Andre Lee, has, I can't remember how many games he played in the NHL last year, but it's more than none. But this is his, first stint in the NHL this season. And again, wasn't clear what his role was going to be, wasn't clear who he was going to play with, what situations he was going to play in. Gets a goal and a really nice goal too. Like, he played 19 games last year. This is, 3 this year, these 3 being this week. And an important goal and a nice goal and not like a grinding, gritty off of his bum, kind of goal, but like on the rush with Quentin Byfield. A really nice goal that was equally about effort as it was about skill. Like he didn't have
100%.
to,
Yeah.
they even said it on the telecast. He didn't have to reach out and put forth that extra effort to get to that puck, but he did. And he had the soft hands to finish it off and turn it into a goal. So he's my honorable mention. I thought he and Ward both acquitted themselves really well this week.
I thought they both showed well for sure. And the legal was interesting because he had to adjust very quickly to a pass that got tipped, right? And Quentin did the intermission interview and he was like, that should have been a better pass from me.
Mm-hmm.
But good on Andre Lee to not let that derail him. And he obviously didn't get the chance to catch it, put it in the wheelhouse and rip it. He had to do what he did. But that's a good play, right? Like a lot of guys probably can't make that play or don't make that play or it goes into the belly or whatever it was, but he did what he could do on that play, got it over the line. I mean, I think one of those two guys had to be the honorable mention, and you can't go wrong with Lee or Ward.
And it gave the Kings the lead in the second period against the tough opponent, right? That like it's very easy to look at the schedule and say, oh, there's 82 games and every game matters the most and blah, 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 blah. But this is the first time the Kings have played Edmonton. They're going into Edmonton without Kopitar, without Armia, without Moore, and you've got all these call-ups and you've just lost to Winnipeg the night before. And at the very least, you need to have, they couldn't have come out and played flat-footed against the Oilers.
Right.
They needed to look good. So to come out and get the lead in the second period, huge. I mean, just hugely important. They played a great first period. It was tied. Then Edmonton, I guess Edmonton hadn't scored at that point. Or no, it didn't. Sorry, it didn't take the lead. It tied the game. Excuse me. I'm
tied the game. Yeah.
Timeline mixed up. But again, important, right? They had played a solid first period. It's 1-1. Draisaitl scores to gives them the lead. Now, is it collar tugging time? Well, no, because 2 minutes later, Andre Lee ties the game. So I just thought hugely important moment, hugely important. Good for him. Calls up, gets a goal. So yeah, he's my honorable mention. Your runner-up, Zach.
So I was between two guys here. They play on the same line. After I picked my king of the week, I had one of two guys here. I'm going to go with Andrei Kuzmenko.
Okay.
I think that anytime that I thought that Andrei Kuzmenko took over the Minnesota game. I thought he was the best player on the ice by far. I thought he dominated that game, especially in the third period. And that was one of the bigger wins the Kings have had all year. Kopitar and Armia both go down in that game. You're down to 10 forwards. You just need somebody to take over the game. The Kings how many times have they needed the guy to take over a game and nobody did? Kuzmenko did for me in that game. And you could go with either of the other dudes on his line here, I think, as well. Kuzmenko, one of 6 guys, I think, with 3 points this week. 2 of them were in that Minnesota game. And because of how big I thought that win was, how gutsy I thought that win was, for him to have clearly been the best player in that game, I think kind of stood out for me over, a week of parity.
Yeah, Kuzmenko and Fiala and Turcotte have turned it on at a really crucial time. Whether or not they can maintain that level of play, and I haven't seen any visible drop-off, will remain to be seen. And one thing that really impressed me about Kuzmenko was at the end of the Winnipeg game, when it was 5-1 in the third period, when they were done, right? Like that game was over at 5-1.
That
And
was
they
a
had
preserve the legs for Edmonton situation.
and yet they didn't.
Yeah.
Which in the moment confused the hell out of me and upset me. And it turns out they beat Edmonton, so I was wrong, which I'm trying to go on record as saying as frequently as possible. Like I was absolutely 100% wrong about the gap between Edmonton and Winnipeg as far as the schedule. Like I was just wrong. I thought they spent way too much time and energy in the third period against Winnipeg, and Kuzmenko was one of those guys doing it. And then I didn't think he looked gassed against Edmonton. And, to your point, he didn't have the impact against Edmonton that he had against Minnesota, at least on the score sheet. But he wasn't not a threat.
Right.
He didn't mail that performance in. And that Minnesota game was, really impressive out of him and his whole line. And, he, like I said, against Edmonton, you could argue, okay, he didn't wind up on the score sheet, but who knows? Maybe him he and Fiala and Turcotte creating occupied the attention of certain Oilers players and tired them out a little bit. Who knows? But end result is a win for the Kings, and so everybody gets credit for it.
Yeah, and look, there were actually a couple things in that third period against Winnipeg that confused me, starting with the goaltender change, knowing you were playing that game the next night.
Right.
All's well that ends well. So clearly whatever they did worked because, I mean, I don't know about you. I thought Edmonton was one of the best games they've played all year, especially considering what they went through going in. You look at this trip and you say, man, they got to beat the Jets, huh? Because Edmonton to Winnipeg, those are not close cities.
Right.
That's a late arrival. That's Winnipeg had played the night before. The Kings didn't. So you have the edge there. The Jets were on an L11. I think they had won 2 of their last 17. So there were so many reasons like, you got to go beat the Jets because the Oilers game is going to be tough. Yeah. And that's exactly kind of what this team has done so many times where they lose that game and then you get really pessimistic. And then they go out and they play like that against a team like Edmonton, backs against the wall, up against it in so many ways. And you're like, that's it. Like, do that more. And it was just, again, even a bizarro weekend of like, they lost the one they should have won. They won the one they should have lost, and all comes out to 1-1.
The end result is they get 2 points. And, it's funny, the Winnipeg game, to me, it was such an odd game because going into this week, not even those 2 games in that weekend, but going into the week, you could look back almost, if you wanted to, into last year, 2025, and say, okay, the Kings on the 23rd, they played Seattle. I would say the 22nd, they lost to Columbus, and it wasn't like a great effort out of the Kings.
But they're pretty poor in that game.
Yeah, but the 23rd against Seattle, they didn't play terribly. They lost. It's a bummer. It was back-to-backs against Seattle and Columbus.
They hit like 6 posts. They did that. That was like,
it was okay. Then they beat the Ducks 6-1. Then they lose to Colorado 5-2 in a game that they played pretty well, but it's Colorado. At some level, what are you going to do? Then the 5-3 Lightning game, which was gutting, but also a well-played game. The 5-4 shootout win, over Minnesota, which had a late game collapse, but was a well-played game. The 4-2 win over Minnesota. The 4-3 overtime loss to the Sharks, which was a well-played game, but whatever. Then the 5-1 loss to Winnipeg, which I genuinely don't necessarily think they played poorly in. They got some really poorly timed goals against. And you can accuse me of being a homer if you want. But there was 1 goal 2 minutes into the game, 1 goal 2 minutes away from the end of the first period, 1 goal 2 minutes into the second, a fluke goal, and I might be conflating 2 of these goals, and then another goal 2 minutes left in the second period. So it's like 4 of the 5 goals were scored within 2 minutes of the start or finish of the period. I thought the Kings played pretty well. The point is that, like, you can go back on the schedule and point to now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 or 8 or even 9 games where the Kings are playing, at least according to the coaching staff, the way that you would want them to play. And so even if they lost big to Winnipeg, and they did, to lean on Daryl Sutter's old expression, it's not whether you win or lose, it's whether you're winning or losing. I would argue the Kings have been winning for a few weeks now. They're just the style they're playing, the way they're playing.
It's probably the best like stretch of a few weeks that we've seen.
Unquestionably. In this
I think
season,
so.
Yeah. No question.
The Winnipeg
and the coaching staff are happy, which is
for sure.
Yeah.
The Winnipeg game to me was just the extreme of what's happened so many times where like the Kings will have the puck in the offensive zone for 90 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
They'll get 5 shot attempts, one good chance, it doesn't go in. Then they go the other way, fluky goal, and it's in. And it's like you control 90 of 95 seconds and lose 1-0 in that stretch. And that happened all of those times. And like, not going to say they played well. They didn't play good, like nowhere near good enough to win the game, right? Like you lose 5-1, you lose 5-1.
Let's be realistic. It was 5-0. The Kings' one goal was like a fluky bounce.
Right.
4-0.
Now, to be fair, so were a couple of the Winnipeg ones, right?
Yeah,
I think Byfield had one at each end off his skate, which is strange. It was a fluky goal. There were probably 3 or 4 of those total.
But that's why that's just 82 games long, right? Because there are dumb games that sneak in and go the wrong way. What are you going to do?
And if that was the only time we'd seen that formula for the Kings, you'd be like, whatever, you move on. Mm-hmm. It's just like a formula we've seen so many times now where it's like they do these things well, get no reward, and then get smacked the other way like immediately.
Yeah.
So the fact that they went into Edmonton and did what they did just makes you forget that for a little bit, which is, I think, they won the game that was more important of the two when you factor
emotionally,
in
absolutely, yeah. Sure. And to tie it back into the King of the Week, I think the play of Andrei Kuzmenko has been a huge part of that stretch of strong play, right? And we saw the difference he made at the trade deadline last year, coming in, galvanized the power play, turned that top line into a consistent scoring threat. It's a totally different line this year, but good for him. My runner up was Brandt Clarke. Because we talked about how many different players there are with points. Kuzmenko was one of the 5 guys with 3 points. Brandt Clarke was one of the however many guys with 2 points, 2 assists plus 3. And I'm going to focus a lot on the defense for my runner up and my King of the Week, because that's who the Kings want to be, right? Is a defensive team. And at even strength, if I have this right, in the 4 games, Brandt Clarke was on the ice for 5 goals for and 2 goals against. If I have my screen pulled up correctly, and all of his numbers, incredibly small sample size. It's 4 games, but like when he was on the ice, the puck was going in the correct direction, and more often than not, it was going in the net. And he doesn't kill penalties, so the rough stretch of penalty kill not on him. And he does play the power play, and his unit specifically seems to have been out there for every good thing that happens on the power play for going on almost a month now. And I just think Brandt Clarke I wasn't sure that Brandt Clarke was going to be able to tailor the second half of his game to be compatible with what the coaching staff wanted. And it's really starting to look like he can, and he has, and he will continue to do so. And I thought he just had a really strong week. So he's my runner-up.
I thought the Edmonton game was so interesting because he played the first 3 games, no points, but was on the ice for a ton of goals. Then he gets the 2 points against the Oilers, but is also on the ice for, I think, every goal against. It's such a strange thing, right? Where, you look at it I thought he could have played that first goal better, the exchange with Forsberg, but then the plays that he makes more than make up for it, where you're like, you're going to live with the occasional play like that because he's going to make good the other way. It's been encouraging to see him, like his floor for usage is so much higher this year than it was last year. And his ceiling is obviously higher. Like he's obviously going to play 20 plus minutes when the Kings are tied or down. But his floor is no longer 14 minutes, it's like 17. So he's still going to play a lot more, even in situations where the Kings might be up a goal. It's just been really nice to see him clearly raise his level for sure, and to have clearly earned a lot more trust from the staff in doing so. We could beat it to death that, trust in young players last year hurt the Kings in the playoffs. And I feel like with Clarke specifically, he has that trust now to where he is playing so much more in so many more situations. And he I think he's just making a really big difference.
And I want to briefly touch on something that I saw on a fan forum somewhere, because it's one of these, I don't know which logical fallacy it falls under, but somebody pointed out that every time Brant Clark plays more than, I think it was 21 minutes, so apologies to the poster if I've gotten the details wrong, but they're winless in games where he plays more than a certain amount of minutes, whatever it is.
I've looked at that too. Yep.
22.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, well, he only plays those minutes in games where they're already losing. So it's kind of a self-selecting statistic. Like, I don't think, because the person's point was, oh, you guys think Brant Clark is so great. If he's so great, how come the more minutes he plays, the more they lose? And it's like, well, I think the reality of that statistic is backwards. And the answer is he plays more minutes because when they're losing, they believe he gives them the best chance to win, because he's actually not bad. He's actually quite good. So anyway, that sort of stat always fascinates me, because it just shows you, right? You can use stats to tweak any argument.
It's one of those stats that if you were trying to prove an agenda of like, see, they shouldn't have been playing, and you point to that with no context and be like, oh, see, like whenever they play and they lose.
Yeah.
But it's he's getting more minutes in trailing situations, as he should.
There's a great TikTok, I'm sure it's on other platforms, but there's a great TikTok account where a guy comes on and he says, it's time for more things that don't correlate at all, but for whatever reason do. And it's like, the average consumption of cucumbers in the United States compares exactly to, GDP in Venezuela. You know what I mean? It's just like two random things that have nothing to do with each other, that always, where the graph follows the exact same path. And you just go, I don't know for a fact that Brant Clark's play directly, he's on the team, so it would stand to reason. But I don't think that they're losing games where he plays a lot of minutes because he's bad. I think it's vice versa. Anyway, sorry, you're king of the week then.
My king of the week is Alex Laferriere. Okay. I picked him for two big reasons. Number one, he was one of the Kings with 3 points, 2 of them goals. Both of those goals came in the third period. In games, the Kings got points. So he didn't score, to your point earlier, the 1 goal in a 5-1 loss. He scored the go-ahead goal in the third period against San Jose that would have been the game winner if they held on. And he scored the go-ahead goal against the Oilers in the third period as well, which put the Kings up. So both games, he put the Kings up 3-2 in the third period. Both of those games went to overtime, so it wasn't a game winner, but both of his goals meant something. So I thought that he had maybe the 2 most important goals the Kings had this week of guys with multiple points. The second reason is not only did he was probably the most impacted by the injuries, because not only does he slide into the middle, but he slides into a very aggressive role, right? You look at his time on ice this week, he was over 20 minutes twice in both of those games, the Edmonton game and the San Jose game. And he's not coming in and playing 3C. He's coming in and playing a true 1C minutes, or, he's up there with Byfield for 1C minutes. He kills penalties now. He plays in the power play. He's playing big minutes at even strength. I thought that the task that he is challenged with the Kopitar out was just greater than anybody else. And to get those 2 goals while embracing that task, I thought was really important. So I thought for me, he was probably the most impactful King this week.
He would have been my honorable mention, I think, if Andre Lee hadn't scored a goal. Like, I wanted to get Laferriere in here somewhere, so I'm glad that you chose him, because you're right. You put it perfectly. He absolutely is the most impacted, because not only does he play center, but he gets put into what was being called the number 1 line, which I disagreed with. But I don't know. I haven't checked the Edmonton game stats yet. But like in almost every other game, at even strength, the trio that plays the most minutes has been Turcotte, Kuzmenko, and Fiala. But I think against Edmonton, it may have been Laferriere's line.
You could do it so many ways, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is the number 1 line? Is if it's by who played the most minutes overall, it's Byfield. If you're doing it by the 5-on-5 minutes specifically, it's probably going to be Turcotte's line.
I just look
in 11-7.
at the 3 of them playing together, right? Because not everybody plays every special team, et cetera, blah, blah, blah.
11-7, it's going to be that line probably every time. I think.
Yeah, because those guys just, so whatever. But any line with Adrian Kempe on it has to get consideration as the
Yeah.
top line, and so that line becomes, like I said, by mention on the telecast, the top line. And I'm trying to find the numbers. I'm struggling here real quick. Let me just try and narrow down my search here, because I remember being quite shocked at how effective the line actually wound up being. Malott, Laferriere, and Kempe played 17.6 minutes so far this season as a line. I have to believe that all of that comes in this week. I don't have definitive proof of that, but I'm reasonably certain that's the case.
I think so.
And, I just thought for the amount of time that they were out there, they were way better than I thought they would be. They controlled play for long stretches. They didn't generate a ton of chances according to fancy stats, but they controlled play. And for a team that, and I think this is one of the most fascinating things about the last 4 games. I think it really starts to sort of reveal the underlying strategy, which is first and foremost defense. And if you are controlling play for the bulk of time that you're on the ice, even if you're not generating high danger chances, even if you're not generating expected goals, if you're controlling play, the other team isn't.
Exactly.
And that alone has value. And I'll get more into that when I talk about my king of the week, because Alex Laferriere is in a really tough spot. I myself personally just don't think him at center is a realistic, viable solution moving forward, but the organization has been talking about it for so long and so confidently, and now they've done it, right? I mean, and granted, it's with Andrei Kopitar out of the lineup, but he came in, and also, not that face-off wins are necessarily any sort of serious mark, but he wasn't he was not great in the face-off dot, but he wasn't horrible. And
won a couple big ones too.
Yes, exactly.
With poor overall numbers, but did
the
win a
overall
couple
numbers
important ones.
can be improved with work and experience.
Mm-hmm.
And power plays, penalty kills, saves, face-offs, those are all stats that fall under the category of, we talk about them in the big picture, like the total number, but realistically it's when they happen that matter more.
Yeah.
And to your point, he won the important ones. So yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned Alex Laferriere, because he had a big week. But unfortunately, Zach, that is not the correct answer. The correct answer is Quentin Byfield. He's my king of the week. He also had 3 points, a goal, 2 assists, a +3. And I looked this stat up and I started getting really curious about it, because at even strength this week, in the 4 games that the Kings played, or excuse me, not even strength, at 5-on-5, Quentin Byfield was not on the ice for a single goal against.
A great pull.
Now, that's the reason that I corrected myself from even strength to 5-on-5s. I think he might have been on the ice for a 4-on-4 goal against, which is even strength, but not 5-on-5. But for 4 games, for Quentin Byfield to not be on the ice for a goal against, and to be clear, there are only 4 players who were not on the ice for a goal against at 5-on-5, and I will gift you 2 of them, Andrei Kopitar and Yoel Armia, who are only on the ice for 4 minutes 36 seconds and 6 minutes 1 second at even strength. Can you name the other player who played 3 games this week who was not on the ice for a goal against at even strength?
My guess would have been Corey Perry, until you gave me the qualifier there.
Yeah.
Cody Ceci.
It's Taylor Ward.
Taylor Ward, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so
I knew it would be someone you would, yeah.
And listen, Taylor Ward doesn't play nearly the minutes. He played 33 minutes and 31 seconds to Byfield's 57-27 at even strength, or 5-on-5.
Oh, it had to be Taylor Ward, because I said it earlier. It was +1 in every game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I went ahead and I looked, because I was curious, because going into the Edmonton game, and this is why I wanted to talk about it. I saw the lines and I said, this doesn't make sense. I think I said on Twitter, I'm just genuinely confused. Because when you're going with 12 forwards and you're going with those 12 forwards, I personally would have loaded up the top 6 with players who could score. I would have taken Laferriere out of the center position, out of the pivot, and put him on a wing with Kempe on a line with Byfield. and I would have loaded up the bottom six with, with AHL grinder types. Having said that, I was clearly wrong. And Quentin Byfield in these games, if I have these correctly, let me find the stats. Quentin Byfield played 10 minutes and 49 seconds, all strengths against Connor McDavid. The only goal Connor McDavid scored was that 5-on-3 power play goal. At even strength, Quentin Byfield played him 8 minutes, 55 seconds. He had 0 goals against. In the Minnesota game, Quentin Byfield played 13 minutes and 1 seconds at even strength against Kirill Kaprizov. Quentin Byfield, when he was on the ice, 20 shot attempts for, 14 shot attempts against, 11 shots on goal for, 6 shots on goal against. Quentin Byfield was on the ice for 1 goal for, 0 goals against. Against the San Jose Sharks, he was out there for more than 11 minutes against Macklin Celebrini. 0 goals for, 0 goals against Byfield when he was out there. And against the Jets, he played 6 minutes, more than 6 minutes against Scheifele, Connor, DeMello, and Morrissey, and wasn't scored on. So, I mean, like, he has become their primary defensive forward, and he is going against the opposition's top players. Now, if you want to quibble with the overall strategy of taking your second overall pick and sort of turning him into a half of the ice player, okay, that's a conversation I'm willing to have, and I would be curious to know what Jim Hiller's thoughts were. But as far as the strategy they have chosen, it is working. And it is because of Quentin Byfield's strengths. He is big, he is fast, he is, I think we said last year going to the playoffs, how many guys in the National Hockey League even possess the physical skills to attempt a one-on-one defensive role against Connor McDavid? Like, it's a pretty short list, and Quentin Byfield has proved himself up to the task. And in a really important game at the end of a really long week, I think Quentin Byfield did a really good job of shutting that line down, and while also getting 3 points and a +3. And, listen, the penalty kill needs work, and it wasn't great this week, and that's a whole other thing. But offensively and at evens defensively, I thought Quentin Byfield really did the job. He's my king of the week.
And that would probably be the pushback to anyone who would say he's a half of the ice player, like you said there, because he had 3 points. I thought of him for the same reason. I did not go into the depth of looking, was he on the ice for a goal against? And if I did, I probably would have put him 2,
right.
And kept Laferriere and Ward. I think I knocked him because of the 3 points. One was off his skate, and one was he made a bad pass that got kicked to Andre Lee.
Sure.
He made a nice finish. But I did take note of the fact that he played against 97, both McDavid and Kaprizov. He played against Celebrini. I think the even strength goal you were talking about was Celebrini's 6-on-5.
Yeah. Oh,
goal.
yes. Yeah. Not 4-on-4. Yeah. 6-on-5.
It was the 6-on-5 goal at the end, which is even strength, but it's not 5-on-5. It's 6-on-5. So he was out there for that, but I don't think he was the culprit, if I recall, on that play.
Listen, at some point you have to.
You know what? Even if he was, that was a filthy play.
Like, sometimes you go up against the best players in the league, and they do incredible stuff. And Macklin Celebrini is obviously one of the best players in the league.
It's one reason I've always loved Mikey Anderson, because he is not afraid to get posterized against a bet. Like, and he'll shut him down 19 times, and if the 20th is him getting beat, like, he doesn't care. He'll go back and do it again. Like, he'll always still make the right plays, even if occasionally it burns him, because he is always playing against the other team's best players. But it really is a credit to whenever Byfield hasn't been scoring, he's never cheated you at the other end. Like, he always gives you what you need defensively. And I think the fact that he was a second overall pick, it just always will make people negative on him whenever he's not scoring. And it's not fair. Like, the fact that he was picked second overall does not matter about the 2025-26 Kings. Like, where someone was picked does not impact if the Kings beat the Oilers on Saturday. And bigger picture, sure.
Yeah.
But like right now, it just doesn't matter.
and I'm going to, slip into scold mode here. So apologies, everybody. Like, one of the things that drives me crazy is that people view every position on the ice in a hockey game, except for goaltender, in terms of their ability to score. So you'll have people talk about, oh, well, Mikey Anderson doesn't bring anything to the offense, therefore, bum, not worth whatever. And you go, okay, but you understand that at least half the game is played on the opposite side of the ice. And, Quentin Byfield, and I'm going to use Jim Fox's words here, is having a disappointing season.
Yeah.
But the part of his season that is disappointing is his lack of offensive production.
Yes.
Not his defensive play. And so what we're looking at is, okay, if you want to say I'm just going to make up a number, 20% disappointing on the offensive side of the game. Okay, that doesn't mean he's playing at 60% of what you want out of him. That means he's playing at 80% of what you want out of him, because he's playing defense the way you want him to. And I'm not going to sit here and, to use the very popular word on King's social media over the past week, I'm not going to gaslight anybody and tell them that Quentin Byfield is playing exactly the way everybody wants him to. I will simply say, he's suffering from what a lot of people are suffering from on this Kings team, which is a lack of offense. And, a lot of that, I believe, is the organizational focus on defense and the way they deploy players. But that's not on the players. And I just think Quentin Byfield had a really good week. And to your point, yes, 2 of his 3 points were of the fluky variety. But, so is one of the goals against him.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the reason I think that he's had a disappointing year is because last year, I think he had 30 points in his last 30 games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's in there. Like, he can do it. And the fact that he hasn't done both is what's been disappointing to me. Like, last year, he logged some of those matchups as well. He was probably more the second fiddle matchup, but like, he had the defensive side and the offensive side. So we're like, okay, we saw a 2-month stretch where he put together the entire package and he was really, really, really good. And that's what's disappointing, is that he is capable of it. Just hasn't done it this year. And we've talked about it a number of times. Neither have 9 or 10 of the Kings forwards. But he's always going to be the one with the biggest lightning rod on
It's
him.
why the biggest question for me going into this season was, will the forward chemistry carry over?
Me too. Yeah.
Last season, because last season it was so good and so balanced. And we were talking about, is Byfield the Fiala whisperer, or is Fiala the Byfield whisperer? Kuzmenko and Kempe and Kopitar were working. Deneau, Moore, and Fogle were working. And now this season we've had injuries. We've had a trade. The top line didn't work nearly the same. The Byfield Fiala connection didn't work nearly the same. And so everything was thrown into chaos, and you've had line jumbles, and Corey Perry and Armia have come in and played roles that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And so the first 40 something games has been this, scramble for chemistry, consistency, whatever you want to call it. But fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your position on overall strategies, the Kings calling card has been defense the last however many years, and certainly under Jim Hiller will continue to be so. And I genuinely don't think there's any room to complain about that. I don't know where they are. I'm going to look it up right now. I know that as of like a week ago, they were second overall in goals against as a team.
At the 41 game mark, they were. I don't know if it's changed either way with the 5 spot in Winnipeg, but
it couldn't have changed that much. Maybe it can. They're 5th in goals against. The Islanders, the Wild, and the Lightning slipped ahead of them, but not by a ton. And that's through 44 games. Wow, what a difference! What a difference 3 games make. Yeah, well, that's what happens when you lose 5-1 to Winnipeg, I guess.
Yeah.
But all the same, that's who they are. That's what their bread and butter is. And we'll, they're top 10 in shots against, they're top 10 in goals against. The penalty kill, that's the other thing. The penalty kill has gotten away from them a little bit, and that's concerning, and they'll need to clean that up. But
for sure,
that's a conversation for a later day. Anyway, I should have said this a long time ago. Congratulations, Quentin Byfield, this week's King of the Week. So now the Kings come home for a while, Zach, and I'm including the Ducks game as part of the homestand because it's a home and home against Anaheim, but they don't have to get on a plane. They don't have to stay in a hotel. It's Anaheim. I will say, though, this is neither here nor there. I just find it interesting. I feel like there have been a lot more Ducks fans at Crypto.com Arena this season than there have been in the last 20 years. So I'll be interested to see what the crowd splits are in this home and home coming up against the Ducks. Kings have basically 5 games in Southern California before going out again on the road. In basically, after this homestand, they have 1 home game left before the Olympic break. And this is not an on-ice issue, and you may not know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you because I'm genuinely curious, and I've started to see people ask. Do you think that Ken Holland will address the media the way he did at the quarter part of the season? We're past the halfway mark, but he did talk to the media after the Deneau trade, which was close enough to the halfway mark, and it was a long enough media availability and covered enough random topics that it could have been. Do you think we'll talk to Ken Holland between now and the Olympic break?
I don't.
Okay.
Unless the Kings make a move that merits him speaking. I don't think there would be a general avail with him. Could be wrong. Maybe there would be a half season.
I mean, we're past the half season. That's why I said to the Olympic break, because the Olympic break feels like a convenient time to be like.
I wouldn't be shocked if he spoke during the Olympic break.
Right.
But my thought would be no, he wouldn't do one unless he makes a move that would necessitate him to speak.
The other thing that popped into my mind, I don't remember who brought it up. It might have been my dad, but there is a trade freeze during the Olympic break.
Yeah.
Which acts as a sort of, it gives us 3 trade deadlines this year.
Yeah.
There's the trade deadline. There's the proper trade deadline. There's the Olympic, actually 4 maybe. There's the Olympic freeze trade deadline because there'll be a freeze on trades for 14 days. Then there was the Christmas break freeze. And then there was I don't even know what we want to call it, but because you couldn't put a player at retention, you can't have secondary retention without a 75-day pause. That break, I think, was the same day as the Christmas break. So I guess it was just 3.
Yeah. I think those were the same deadline.
Yeah, it was like the 20th and the 21st, but the Christmas break came before the retention.
De facto.
Yeah. So it'll be weird because there'll be the Olympic trade freeze and then that'll be lifted. And then you'll have about 10 days between the end of the Olympics and the trade deadline. So the Olympic break represents this wild opportunity for GMs to talk and broker deals and work things out. I suspect the gossip during the Olympic break is going to be crazy.
You would think so, right? I mean, it definitely is an opportunity for conversations to be had, and it creates that like sprint to the deadline almost. I would wonder if there will be minimal activity going into the Olympic break, because are you going to make a move and have that dude just sit there for 3 weeks? Or like if you're adding an Olympian, are you going to be like, oh, do we want to see what happens at the Olympics first? Or are we trading quality assets for a player who could go over to Milan and get hurt? I wonder if that might factor in too.
I do want to address this because Kings fans of a certain vintage will remember. I think it was 2006. The Kings had, I want to say, 5 or 6 Olympians, and I think 2 or 3 of them got hurt. And it was in Torino.
In the tournament.
It was Torino, Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was like Frolov, Dimitra. I don't remember who all went, but my recollection is that at least a couple guys got hurt. Jeez. And it was a bummer. And so, yeah, if you make a trade on the eve of the Olympics for a guy, like I'm just for example, a Yoel Armia type player.
Yeah.
If some team makes a trade for that type of player and they're on a team that isn't likely to medal and they go out and play in the Olympics and get hurt, oh man, you're
in one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's not an Olympian, like, I could see both sides. Like maybe you be like, oh, like we have a kind of a mini training camp to work this player in. So maybe that would inspire you. But also, I mean, dollars and cents are a real thing. Are you taking on a big contract and paying that player to not play for your team for 3 weeks? Like kind of wasting that. So like I could see both ways. But you do wonder how the Olympic one specifically, for all of those factors, would either spur trades or maybe push trades back to that like 10-day window you talked about.
And I don't know that this would happen, but certainly in years past, and it probably isn't as frequent as it seems like in my memory, there have been guys, whether it's all-star breaks or international tournaments, who wind up playing with players that they never played with before, who decide, oh, this was a lot of fun. We should do this more. And I don't know what everybody's contract status is. I don't know, the rules are going to change in so many different ways over the next 12 months. But like, yeah, what if two guys go and play on an international team and decide, oh, I really like this. And then somebody comes back as a really strong advocate for an international teammate and goes like, we got to get this guy. And then you've got 10 days to get it done. I told Jim Fox and John Kelly, when we do the 3/4 check-in of our top 10 questions, I told them, I'm just going to rewrite the questions. Because
I think we're at that point, right?
This season has just gone totally off the rails, and everything's going to change.
Yeah.
The Olympics are different, and everything's just no point in pretending that the first half of the season will have anything to do with the second half of the season. It's such a weird year. So anyway, that's what it is. Zach, I appreciate you joining me as always.
No worries. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Monday at home against the Dallas Stars. All right. Thanks, Zach. Talk to you soon.